Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at Third Place Books in Lake Forest Park with Richelle Mead, author of Gameboard of the Gods.
Hi, Bill. Thanks for talking to me again.
When did the idea of story first light up in your mind, going all the way back to your childhood? Can you remember when it struck you as something that meant something to you?
I'm not sure I could give you like the exact moment, but I can tell you from a very early age, I wanted to make stories, and I think it's because I just love them so much when I was young. And when you deal so much with that, when you read so much and your head is always just spinning with other people's stories, after a while you want to make your own. You start to think, oh, how could I have changed that? Or what would have happened if it had ended this way? And so when I was very little, I would make my own picture books. I would take my parents' business stationery. They always wondered why it went missing. And I'd fold it up, draw it, and make epic tales of mermaids and unicorns and things like that. And so even then, you know, it was just always kind of kicking around. And it took years and years before I had the true discipline to write, you know, something that's a novel length. But it was always there.
Now, when you say years and years, for some people that's 50, age 50 or 45, but for you that was still in your 20s probably, or maybe...
My late 20s was when I finally sat down, you know, and I think I just needed to be older for myself to be able to do that, and I think I needed to live a little. I know people, you know, much younger who can write, you know, can knock out that novel at 21, and that's awesome. I'm jealous of that, but I think I needed a few more years under my belt.
So what was the living you had to do in your 20s, do you think, to allow you to write?
You know, I think just life, like even the most mundane things. I had terrible jobs. I mean, that's what happens when you have a liberal arts degree. You know, you don't shoot right into glamorous artistic things.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, I worked office jobs I hated. I did telephone sales, which was miserable, and I mean, just things that just, when you have to focus on the basics of surviving of life, and not just, you know, work, I mean with relationships and things like that as well. I just think it all kind of adds in, and it gives you a bigger perspective on life. And even though my novels then tend to stray towards big, epic, you know, grand conflicts, so many of those little tiny things that I had to go through in my life still kind of feed into that, because I think they're important to making a realistic story.
Absolutely, and you know, the thing is, the quote small things that we go through in our lives that, you know, in a science fiction or fantasy novel particularly might seem mundane, can seem quite large to us at the time, quite painful, quite upsetting, and in a way, don't you just sort of take those and expand them to create the kind of conflicts that you write about in your novels?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the whole write what you know comes from, and people ask me about that, especially younger writers, because they'll say, well, I haven't done anything, how can I just write about being in high school? And I try to say it's not that verbatim exactly. It's, you know, if you're writing a love story and you've been hurt in love, you know, put that emotion into it, because that's going to make it ring true to your reader. You know, it may not be the same a high school breakup versus whatever, you know, Romeo and Juliet kind of conflict you may end up writing about, but the core of those emotions are the same. And if you can tap that from life and put it on the page, that's what's going to get through to people.
That's right. Because really, writers, I always think, aren't writing so much about what happens, but what it feels like when that happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's been the appeal of my books and a lot of others in the genre. I don't even think half the time it is the fact that there's a vampire involved or something fantastic. I mean, that does appeal to us, and we love that escapist aspect to it. But I think half the time my readers, and even I sometimes forget, I'm dealing with supernatural creatures. You know, we're dealing with pain and heartache, and my upcoming book deals a lot with mental health, which is a very human thing, you know, to have to deal with, and it's not even about the fantastic sometimes.
You know, you had a lot of success with the Vampire Academy series. That was really your breakout series in a way that really, and I know that the idea for it actually wasn't initially was suggested to you, wasn't it, by your editor? Or your agent? It's
an agent, yeah. It was my big thing I love in all my stories is putting things together that don't seem to go together. And I was trying to think, okay, what's my next book going to be? And you know, it was suggested to me, have you ever thought about teen vampires? And this was before Twilight was a household name, and so I had never thought about that. And to me, it was just it was just, what a crazy juxtaposition, teenage vampires. And I just loved playing with that, and then mixing that with some Romanian and Russian folklore I had studied as well. And so again, you know, it's another piece, something different I can kind of pair with that shouldn't go together, but I made it work. And so that was sort of how that fell into place.
But you didn't have a kind of curiosity about vampires necessarily prior to that, did you?
No, I wouldn't say anything special. I'm just such a lover of fantasy. It was kind of like, okay, you know, here's something I just haven't done before. I had done sort of the demon world with succubi and then fairies and ghosts and other things. And I was like, okay, what's our next creature we can play with? And it happened to be vampires, little knowing what I was stumbling into. If I had known, I almost think I actually wouldn't have gone there.
Why?
It's an intimidating thing to realize how big this genre is and how popular vampires now are in the collective unconscious. And I think I might have shied away just because you worry about being too much like something or too little like something that's out there. And so I'm glad I was able to sort of write in a vacuum. You know, I had my idea and I just went with it without knowing what else was there, because I think that really might have thrown me off. Yeah,
the worst thing a writer can do is start looking out.
Yes.
You know, at all that's around, because there's so, I mean, look at, we're surrounded in books.
Yeah, exactly.
And none of them are yours.
Right.
Well, this one is.
Yeah.
But most of them aren't.
Yeah, no, it'll mess with your head for sure.
You know, of all the comments on my YouTube page, it's yours, where, oh, I was weeping, I couldn't believe it, I was so upset. These young women just pouring out their hearts in these little comments about what happened to them when they read your books.
I love them. I mean, it means so much to me to know that what I feel locked away in my office is getting through to someone and getting into their hearts. And
isn't it magical in a way? Because you were just all alone, you and your imagination.
Yeah, and there's some days I don't like it, you know, and I get gasps when I tell people this, you know, but there are days I look at that and I was like, I don't want to write another book ever. I hate this manuscript. And then, you know, when they're so open with me and they're so vulnerable and willing to tell me how they feel, it just you know, makes your heart clench. And I realize this is worth it. You know, what I did, the pain I've gone through to get this on the page was worth it, you know, for them.
I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of writers, there's so much talk about marketing and selling through and the heart and the Kindle and all this, but the experience of having another human being read and be affected by your work, you have to have one cold heart not to care about that, not to let that actually be a motivation. It's easy to forget about, too.
Oh, it's very easy.
Because you spend most of your time alone.
Well, exactly. And, you know, and it's a bigger wake-up call to me than when we get the sales numbers sometimes. You know, you always wait, you know, the week after a new book comes out, we're all, you know, fingers crossed waiting for the lists. And, you know, that can be a motivating factor, of course, you know, if they were good or bad. But, I mean, when I actually go and talk to people at a signing, I mean, that's the slap in the face, especially if I've been having a hard time and struggling with a book and not liking it. You know, it's kind of like, okay, you can do better. Okay, you can do better, because I don't want that person to be disappointed. And that'll be a bigger motivation than, oh, I wish we could have sold a few more thousand or whatever. Okay,
well, Richelle, I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
Finish this sentence for me.
Oh, no.
Oh, you can do it, I'm sure.
These and hypotheticals are always dangerous.
No, I think you can do this. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me a greater appreciation for my own life.
Oh.
I think.
How's that?
It makes me pay attention to my own life more. When you spend your day examining the details and minutiae of the human experience, you appreciate more what's good in yours, and what things, you know, when bad things maybe aren't quite as bad as you thought. You know, you have to become an observer of the human experience to write, and you can't just do it on fictitious characters. You got to do it on yourself as well. And I think I've learned a lot more about myself along in this journey.